Hi, Roy here with Dr. Jennie riding shotgun.
Hello.
So, had you been reading the Dudley Mercury in February 1888? In fact, to give it its full title, this is Jennie's paper. Dudley Mercury, Stourbridge, Brierley Hill and County Express.
Jeez.
You would have read an account of a meeting about adult education where a gentleman called the Reverend J. Wesley Bell said the following. The speaker next proceeded to give some useful hints as to the choice of books, remarking that if a man wanted to make life worth living, he could find no better assistant than good literature, and there could be no more serious impediment than the use of impure and degrading literature. He hoped all those present that evening banished from their home life every portion of literature which was impure and unhealthy, intellectually ruinous and spiritually degrading, and prevented the fulfilment of the duties of this life. He would like to perform the duty of weeding out the yellowbacked abominations which were to be found in the public libraries of the country. And a year later, similarly, in The Scotsman, subhead Pernicious Literature and Novel Reading, the Reverend Mr. Wright, Musselburgh Free Church, last night delivered the last of a course of lectures on social evils of today, his subject being pernicious literature, bad books for the young, novels and novel reading, referring to the tone of a number of books circulating in libraries. He said these books not merely incapacitated the mind of the reader for any serious thought, but they were calculated to sink religion and purity and exalt vice. He had no wish to condemn novels as a whole, but he condemned entirely the yellowbacks, which were devoid of any real instruction or any advice on the proper conduct of oneself in life. So that's twice yellowbacks have been mentioned, and that's why I was looking for that stuff, because the descriptions or sort of allusions to these yellowbacks as being some kind of dodgy literature keep cropping up, and I was interested to find out a bit more about them. We're reading two of them for Victober, or at least one of the books that is like the Victober group read, The Doctor's Wife. That was released as a yellowback. I'm reading Armadale by Wilkie Collins, so are some others. That was a yellowback. So are we exposing ourselves to this pernicious, degrading literature with all of the debilitating effects that have been were mentioned by these Victorian clergymen back in the 19th century? And I have to say, all the negatives they say, that sounds like a mission statement for Garb August, but
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't noticed your behaviour becoming more pernicious.
Well, yeah, but it's a danger, isn't it? It's a danger. So I was looked at, what were they? And I do like to actually have a physical object to figure these things out. Now,
as our bookshelves will attest.
yes, indeed. Call it a rabbit hole, if you will. Now, the yellowbacks are pretty rare. They were issued from the mid-19th century. They were cheap editions of books. There were thousands of them, and they were sold on railway bookstalls, presumably other places as well, but they were strongly associated with the railways, so they were like commuter literature. So very much a thing of the times, all of those things coming together, more people could read, economy was doing okay, the railways were a thing. So like the Kindles of their day, people were getting these yellowbacks to read. To buy like a famous novel that happened to be a yellowback would have cost hundreds of pounds. So I bought an unknown novel, A Detective's Triumphs. It's actually short stories, really, by Dick Donovan, just to see what they're like, you know. So the famous yellowback is indeed yellow, and it's on the back. Yeah, and it's an advert for Pears soap. Ardent advertisers, Pears soap. So basically what you're getting, yeah, you can still get it.
Smells really nice.
It's all right. So the pictorial cover is like literally stuck onto the boards, but it's not like a dust jacket. That is one. And two, they were varnished. So obviously this is like over 150 years old, so it's dull, worn, the varnish is all rubbed off, but at the time, with the inks really bright and the varnish all shiny, they must have looked amazing. So, and it's quite a hefty book, you know, so for your price of 2 shillings, not that cheap, you got 300 pages of reading, you know, so they were sort of decent productions, although I could tell at some point this one had been rebound, which is fine, but I sort of thought, you know, is there something I might be missing about how they were originally constructed? So for very little money I bought one that's really on its last legs, but that's great because you can see lots of things about the construction of the book.
Is that the same book?
No, this is called The Woodman.
Oh, okay.
Does whatever a wood can. Also different publishers. These were Chatto and Windus. These are George Routledge. So you could sort of see with here how it was sort of put together. And yes, it was as I thought. No dust jacket. Everything's like glued in place. Also, what you might not get in a sort of more lavish production of a book, adverts. You get a few pages of commercial advertisements at the front for things that were advertised quite a lot. Lots of health issues, Beecham's pills.
They're just the thing, I heard.
Yeah, I mean Beecham's pills were so associated with advertising that by the time of what's it called, Brideshead Revisited, which I think came out in the 1940s, a character says that somebody's in the magazines as much as Beecham's pills. Quite an interesting book. It's a historical one, this, when somebody's given it as a present, written some notes that I can't quite read. And you then get a book catalogue in the back as well. So this is what we're talking about, these railway novels. If you, like I said, thousands of them. And they included quite a lot of the sort of sensation novels, obviously. They were the sort of things people wanted to read. Popular fiction of the time. Cheap popular fiction, which probably is one reason they attracted some opprobrium. Because people don't like, you know, just anybody reading anything. But remember, yellowbacked abominations. They should be weeded out and destroyed. So that sounds a bit extreme for, you know, most of the things. They weren't even all, you know, there were non-fiction books as well about things like, you know, the sort of moths of the British Isles. I can't believe
They're
that.
abominations.
Well, I suppose, yeah.
Well, the big ones are.
But they did have this reputation. So the term yellowback or yellow-jacketed novels, book with yellow cover, often crops up as some kind of, here's someone reading something a bit racy that maybe they shouldn't. So, for instance, they could be used as sort of character signifiers in fiction. So a short story I found in Titbits has a bachelor who's just about to get married saying, "I give and bequeath to the flames my yellowback novels and plays, formerly used to alleviate my bachelor pangs." So, you know, he's turning over a new leaf, doesn't need those yellowbacked novels and plays anymore. In a magazine called Truth, get a character being met. He was relieved to find on reaching Miss Lola Bell's address that the young lady was within, and having with some trepidation given his assumed name of Templemore, he was ushered into a daintily furnished sitting room where he found his hostess gracefully reclining on a sofa, reading a yellowback novel and smoking a fragrant cigarette. So this thing of the reclining woman reading, it crops up in paintings. I'm putting up a picture by Rhizos Iakovos, lady reclining on couch. And it just seems that the combination of woman reclining and reading comes together as some kind of cluster of things that crops up quite a lot. For instance, an article about some potential censorship in libraries. The boundless realms of fiction are open to the censor. Young ladies may find their supply of Yellowback novels suddenly arrested. So this idea that, it's young women are addicted, gotta get me Yellowbacks so I can lie on the couch and read them. An article about cycling combines two things. Ladies are lured by knickerbockers. Miss Bateman stated at the Ideal Club yesterday that last week 25 members of her club all went out together in rational costume. So no more corsets with your waist like this big and stuff like that. You were wearing practical clothes which you could move around and do things like cycling in. This was like new woman activity. That's a sign of the times, if you like. This is the article writer. We wish all these movements every success. We do not think rational dress any way immodest, though we also do not think it beautiful. But that's not our affair. If the allurement of knickerbockers persuades women to ride on bicycles, who would otherwise read Yellowbacks? We make no doubt that health, and by consequence beauty, will be the gainer in the end. But just to unpack that a bit, the new woman in a rational dress like knickerbockers, out cycling. Haha, yes, okay, that's fine. You'll be healthier and prettier. Because if you weren't doing that, so not new woman, but I suppose classic woman, would by default have been lying around reading the Yellowbacks. So they had this kind of reputation, but it doesn't seem enough to make them into abominations or to fuel the continued use of yellow in books as the kind of marker of here's something thrilling and popular and genre-ish, which I'm going to explore a little bit later. So let's just rewind a bit to the 1890s. Three things happen. The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. In that book, Dorian Gray is this character who becomes corrupted and corrupt, and along the way a key thing in this is a book given to him by his sort of mentor in libertinage, who leaves on the table a book bound in yellow paper, the cover slightly torn and the edges soiled. When he comes to read it, it seemed to him that in exquisite raiment and to the delicate sound of flutes, the sins of the world were passing in dumb show before him. Things that he had dimly dreamed of were suddenly made real to him. Things of which he had never dreamed were gradually revealed. Also, in reality, a publication called The Yellow Book came out in, started in 1894, ran until 1897. So this was, I guess you could call it an attempt to pull together lots of sort of very much of the time groundbreaking literature of various kinds, and art as well. Aubrey Beardsley started off as the artist. It was, of course, yellow and had all sorts of interesting stuff in it. It's published by John Lane. 1895, the Yellow Book's been going for a year or so. Oscar Wilde is arrested, and this is a big scandal and poured over in the press. Every detail of the arrest is sort of communicated as if it's like a great moment. We've got to understand all these things. With a deep sigh, he dropped an evening paper and, raising himself by the aid of the arms of the chair into standing position, he remarked with characteristic nonchalance to the officers, so this is not non-fiction journalism by somebody who can't possibly have been there. Well, if I must go, I will give you the least possible trouble. Wilde then passed over to a couch, picked up his overcoat and was assisted in putting it on by one of the young men present. Carefully he lifted and adjusted his hat. He grasped his suede gloves in one hand and seized his stick with the other. Then he picked up from the table a copy of the Yellow Book, which he placed in security under his left arm. So this bit of actually fake news, because it was he apparently was carrying a book called Aphrodite that had yellow covers. It was not the John Lane Yellow Book, most people seem to think. But the fact of associating this with the Oscar Wilde scandal, people assumed that the contents of these this quarterly literary journal was way more obscene and transgressive than it actually was. So much so, they were attacking the offices of the publishers. So, yes, it's come to that. So, Yellow Book, but that doesn't just mean... It isn't these railway books that are upsetting people alone, you know, it's not just them. Because there's another whole strand, and that's to do with French novels. So French novels crop up again. Often you can't quite know what it is that's meant to be so shocking about them, but they're often mentioned as, oh, reading the French novels. Take a look at this picture by Augustus Egg. See the lady on the floor, passed out, because what's happened, see the sad-looking husband? He's reading an account of her infidelity. Detail, one of many. See the children, the little children playing cards in the corner. They're building a house of cards, resting on a book. And that book is by Balzac. It's a French novel. So the French novel, it's introduced the poison into the domestic setting and led to this dreadful state of affairs. And there are actually two more paintings when even worse things happen. It's like a graphic novel of its time. So French novels. Now, not all French novels had yellow covers, but a lot of them did. Just ask Vincent van Gogh, painting a pile of French novels. What colour are they? Yellow. So that's another thing. And I'd almost put these in a sort of hierarchy where, okay, sort of yellowbacks from railway stations, all that sort of... it's your popular trashy fiction. It's a little bit racy. That's pretty bad. Pretty dangerous. French novels, yeah, well, some of them, Balzac and the stuff, they could be worse. French novels in yellow covers, danger, danger, danger. Retreat. So this is my thesis, is that all of that combined has made yellow into this kind of symbol of, I suppose, decadence, the outre, the dangerous. So let's say you're writing a book about a play which sends anyone who sees it mad. You might call it The King in Yellow. Say you're writing a book with some poison wallpaper in it. What colour's that going to be? Or, if you're inventing the locked room mystery and also annoying Kelly from books I'm not reading. Again, what colour's that room going to be? Say you're publishing Bram Stoker's Dracula for the first time. Reproduction. It's going to be yellow, isn't it? Okay, then moving on. That's all forgotten. Giallo. Gialli. The Italian crime books that also then gave rise to the film genre. That means yellow, so that's pretty clear.
It's as yellow as you can get.
Victor Golanc's crime series, yellow. So in fact a sort of anthology of them called Crime Yellow. So the yellow was associated with crime and also with science fiction. So that slightly undermines my idea. Although I suppose if you're from a sort of Victor Golanc's point of view, if it's yellow, it's genre. Hodder and Stoughton, Yellowjackets, with things like Bulldog Drummond and all of their famous adventure series. Yellow, yellow, yellow. So, yeah, that's... Maybe it's a thing, maybe it's complete nonsense, because there's lots of innocent yellows, or, Nancy Drew books. in their classic livery are indeed yellowbacks, but I wouldn't.
Gateway books.
Yeah.
Gateway to the world of
I
yellow.
wouldn't say. Thinking of Dorian Gray and how he described his yellow book, unless there's like a forbidden Nancy Drew book that sends people mad if they read it. Oh yeah, also in science fiction, door books. They're beautifully yellow. So be careful out there, because there are yellow books around that will drive you insane. Basically, seems to be how it works.
And don't drink the absinthe.
Okay, back soon with something else.
Put that